This episode is accidentally brought to you by Sweet Action by Sixpoint Brewery in Brooklyn. When you can finally tell your friends you got some sweet action last night, and it wasn't a lie. I'm so alone right now. Let's start the slow-moving car wreck.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Designers Are the Worst, your new least favorite show about an exclusively visual medium cleverly brought to you in an audio format. Speaking of Matt, I am Matt. And my last name is Salek, which I didn't say on the last two episodes.
No. You are a mystery. And
I still am.
Oh my God. The beer was just so good. And I am your unfortunate, illegitimate cousin. Not really, but anyways.
Well, maybe somebody out there.
Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Marcus Farrell, and I co-host this car wreck that we call a podcast.
Yeah, you should see it in here. It looks. We were talking about before we went on that it actually kind of looks like a thing in here that people actually want to come and see. There's microphones and lamps, coasters.
I think you're one panel away from making a tutorial and selling it on Skillshare.
2 panels. I got a 3x6 panel and a 3x8 I'm building. I already bought all the hardware for it. So yeah, those are going up hopefully this weekend. But it's going to be like an igloo made out of canvas and insulation by the time I'm done.
And we're putting sand down, right?
Yeah.
Because we're getting an umbrella.
Yeah, and it's going to be like that episode of Friends when they go to the beach house and it's full of sand.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll bring the crabs.
I'll bring some to eat.
Mine are for scratching, but whatever.
So thanks for joining us again, or for the first time, or perhaps the last time. We don't know how this is going to go. Today we're talking about something that I have experience with tangentially. I don't have any like firsthand experience with it. What about you?
I have zero. No, I have like a 1% experience from being to one event that was sponsored by this group.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about design organizations. Like the Graphic Designers of Canada is the big one in Canada, oddly enough. We also have the RGD, the Registered Graphic Designers.
Yeah.
And then associations in the States like AIGA, which according to our stats, about 11 of you would understand because you are in America.
Which is the American Institute of Graphics Art. I had to look that up because nowhere on their site does it actually tell you what the acronym stands for.
No.
Beside the logo, it says like, a design group of people who da-da-da. It's like, well, yeah, what the fuck does it mean, though? So it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, so we have no experience with these other than going to events and drinking a bunch of the beer. The person that we're going to have in today, his name is Emrys Damon Miller. Some of you may know him. Most of you probably won't. He is actually the president of... In our area around Victoria and Vancouver Island outside of Vancouver, he is the chapter president of the Graphic Designers of Canada. So basically what his job is trying to entertain designers who are waiting for the president to make a mistake at every turn based on what I've seen.
And I'm looking forward to seeing, or I've heard that we're supposed to be getting honorary leather vests with the badges.
It's one we have to share.
Of his chapter.
Yeah. And chapter chaps.
Yeah. So we can hop on our appropriate two-wheeled bicycles or scooters and ride off into the sunset or the ocean.
Yeah. So we're going to talk to Marcus, or not, we're going to talk to Marcus too. Fuck, it'd be rude if we didn't talk to you. We're going to talk to Emrys about who the hell belongs to these organizations, what the hell did they do, and why the hell would we ever give them hundreds of dollars a year to be a part of it? Now, some people absolutely love these organizations, in my experience. Other people would never be a part of it. And then there's this huge area in the middle where they pay it. They're part of the group. They don't really know the benefit they get, but they know that they like being part of it. So we're going to get into all that and hopefully get to the bottom of something. And also Emrys has another interesting thing to talk about, which is a while back, he kind of made a promise to his own company that 100% of the clients were going to be good for the planet. So it can't be anything, that we pretty much do here at Bully, which is like capitalist. Like all of our clients are trying to make a bunch of money, and we're trying to help them make that money.
All oil barons with monocles and 6-shooters that.
And then every other
things
piece.
like, yeah.
Actually, I have done so much goddamn work for like the oil fields and like these huge gnarly companies that I was white labeling. I was acting as a part of another studio on the east side of the country. And I was going to say, if people say the east side, they mean like the city. No, I mean like thousands of kilometers away or whatever miles are for you.
The East Coast, do you mean?
Kind of. It's towards like Ontario.
Too much.
Yeah. So I've done a bunch of work for them. They're around like oil fields and they're around energy and all this kind of stuff. And there's always like a bit of me that felt kind of bad about doing work for oil companies. And then they never argued over the bill and they paid them immediately. And I'm like, I love oil. It's my favorite liquid.
Yeah, I did some work recently for some trade show stuff that was like, oh, it's the petroleum festival, not the festival, where they spray. I now picture this dunk tank. It's like, you don't want to be dunked in that because it's just gas. But yeah, it's
surrounded by a bunch of guys with goatees and ponytails
and cigarettes about to be put out.
Get them in there.
Where should I put this? In the bin? Yes. But yeah, there's that part of you that's just kind of like, I don't know if I feel good about this, but at the same time, it's like we do other things in life that aren't good for anything else. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, we have 3 kids. Marcus and I have 3 kids together, sharing custody. But it comes to the point where a client will come along that you're like, I buy gas for my car. I'd rather buy an electric car, but they're so goddamn expensive. I have, it's maybe some moral weirdness around this. And then my oldest kid, he's like, I want to be in sailing club this year. I'm like, oh shit. All right. Yeah, I'll do that job and I will love the money. And yeah, then the kids get to eat and play on boats and all that. So
yeah,
it's a trade-off. So we're going to talk to Emrys today about like the financial impact. Like, did he take a huge hit? Is he doing fine? I assume he's doing fine. Every time I see him, he's fucking smiling, in a good way. Emrys has always been the like polar opposite of me, which is why I enjoy him, because he's like very nice to everybody and he's always smiling and he gives up like so much of his time and he has these causes and all this kind of stuff. And at times I resent it because he's so nice. And then other times like, well, fucking whatever. I'll just make him look better.
Yeah, that's true. There's a nice balance to that.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, should we talk about our website?
We have a website now.
Well, we did before, but nothing was on it except for a nice little lander.
Now we have a multi-page website. We call it a web experience.
It's you need a VR goggles for it. They are required. If you go to the site and enter in your address and money, we will send you some, and then you'll see that the site's normal. But so we built it on Squarespace because if you are in the design world, your own website is the last thing that you have time for.
Yep.
And so it never gets done.
Go to builtbybully.com and see exactly what he means. It's like once a year I build a shitty splash page, and then I'm like, that feels good. Now I'm just gonna go back to work.
Yeah, I'm just gonna change the picture and I'm gonna update the logo.
Yeah, I get all motivated and I'm like, okay, I mapped out the rest of the site and I'm gonna put a bunch of time into it. We're gonna do case studies. We're gonna do whatever, and then I just fucking it shits a bed and I don't do anything. Yeah.
So the site now, when you go to it's designersartheworst.com. We have the episode show notes up there, or it's just episode notes. It's not show notes.
Well, we consider each one a show. It's episode notes, I guess.
Epinotes.
Epinotes.
So you need an EpiPen to read the Epinotes. And so we've got links up there, pictures of all the shit that we talk about, stuff.
The stuff we're accidentally sponsored by.
Exactly.
Which so far today is Sweet Action by what?
Sixpoint Brewery, which you thought said Sweet Onion.
Which
which I wouldn't put it past some stupid brewer out there. It's like, you should put sweet onion in this beer. They put beard yeast in it. Not this one, but
also at the time I saw it, I was hungry and I was like, sweet onion, you get some chips, or like, what are we doing? And then
got some Miss Vicky's sweet onion chips. No.
So how did you like using Squarespace? Because I had a learning curve experience with it about a year ago. And then once I figured out how you actually build the shit, it all clicked. But it's counterintuitive.
Oh my God, yeah.
In a way.
It takes me back to the days of like getting a WordPress template or like browsing like Theme Forest or one of those sites. And you see these like cool WordPress sites. You're like, oh, I'm going to download that or illegally or purchase it legally, whatever your choice is.
Look at all that broken English. This has to be amazing.
And then you get it and you're like, it looks nothing like the demo. I don't know how to do any of this shit. It's all built on this weird page builder. Anyways, so Squarespace is kind of like that, where you're given kind of the basic things of it. And there's still some things that like it's frustrating. But you know, if this is like the fourth template in that I've gone through, because you go through one template, you're like, oh, I can't remove that section. It's got too much stuff.
Yeah.
Go use another template. You're like, oh, this looks fucking stupid and broken with our content.
Yeah.
And then you try another one, and because you like, it looks good, but then you check it out on responsive and it looks terrible. Or the logo, if it's not a text, it'll always be the same color. But if it is text, it changes color based on the content.
Yeah.
And they don't allow you to upload multiple logos. Great job.
Yeah.
So this is like the fourth version of it. And at some point I just kind of stopped and been like, okay, this is fine. Now you can just duplicate every post and then just replace the content and it's fine. But
yeah,
the fact is the site is up. It has content that will be added to every time a new episode is out.
Yeah. And we would love to hear your design critiques on it.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do. And that's why we're the fucking worst. We're like, oh, for a bunch of designers, it doesn't look like they spent tons of time on it. It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah. And our logo and all that, that was, I think, a solid 7 minutes for me exported.
Yeah.
The whole point, we knew that if people started listening to the show eventually and getting into it and more designers see it, that they're going to pick apart every fucking thing we do. So guess what? We don't care. We just put it up so we had something to put up. Us being designers too, we would obsess over it. Just nonstop.
Yeah.
Like if we're trying to make it the greatest logo and website ever, we'd never stop working on it and it would never be done. So we just had to get some shit up just so we could start talking, so we could suck at this accidentally because we already sucked at designing on purpose.
That's the same thing that you were saying earlier. I have multiple sketch files of site January 2017, site November 2016, and all these ideas. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
And then the amount of time it's going to take for me to develop that, when there's other things that can actually make me money, like clients, and have more of a benefit to my overall joy of doing the work, then I just don't bother with my own site. And that's why now it's just, I put it's like a video background with a flag and the name made by vandals with an email link. That's it.
Yep, that's what the bully site is.
Because
I found I found a photo of Mexico from like 1982 or something like that, and I just put it up.
And here's what I've found is that most of my clients don't go to the site. It's all word of mouth. Yeah, and that's kind of the generic thing that happens with bigger agencies too. It's a lot of the same. I think it's a rarity that somebody's actually contacting you through your site. That's how they found you organically.
Yeah, we've had a few people recently. I put intercom on our homepage.
Ooh,
because it's cool. It's easy to use. It's when your site sucks, having something up where people can get in touch with you quickly is really helpful. And so they don't have to email. Sometimes that's like an impediment to people getting into the process of talking to you. They don't want to send an email. So what Intercom does is a little circle in the bottom right of your page. They click it, chat window comes up. You can customize a message. So we say, hey, our site's a bag of shit. If you want work samples, just let us know what your project is and we'll send you a bunch of work samples. So we've actually had a few people come through requesting information and work samples from us, but those people were referrals, which they would have gotten in touch with us anyway. So, so speaking of word of mouth,
Ludicrous? Oh no, that's word of mouth.
About Ludicrous?
That's an album I like.
Oh, all right. So we've had the podcast up for 2 weeks now, or a week and a bit, or something like that. We've gotten a few notes of positive feedback, which is great, but also we want to hear what you guys want to hear about. We have like this big list of topics, but eventually that well's going to run dry. We're going to have more stuff to talk about. So get at us on all the social media things that we're on at Worst Design Show, and let us know if any of this is working for you. If there's anything you'd like to hear in an upcoming one, we'll totally consider it.
And in terms of talking to people, we definitely prefer in person. Skype, Hangouts, it's not going to work because there's beer involved and time zones, and it's not natural if it's through a screen and you're trying to, and if there's any delays, any sort of technical issues, the whole thing goes to shit.
Yeah.
And fuck it all.
Having said that, if the lead designer of fucking, I don't know, at Apple wants to be on and he can only Skype, we'll probably make an exception. But for the most part, we're going to want to talk to like real people that live around us. And we'll take road trips and shit too, but we want to talk to real people about real stuff. So one thing that I found kind of weird and frustrating in the past week was when I started off designing, I looked at design resources all day. Back then it was like Caliber 10,000 and Surf Station and Design is Kinky and all these cool things. And they would bring up like, oh, you should check out this person's work. And it's just kind of this news feed of cool design work. And that's how I found out that people were doing cool stuff in design. And then there came a point where it must have been 12, 13, 15 years ago or something like that, where I had to stop looking at all that shit because it was influencing my work inadvertently. And I could get halfway through a project and say, oh shit, that's so similar to that one I saw on Surf Station that I have to, in good conscience, scrap the file and start over. And so I haven't looked at design stuff forever. And I was happy. And now with the show's social media accounts and all that, I'm following more people just to get the word out about the show. And some people are just having these fucking heated discussions all day long about like the most inconsequential bullshit on like Twitter, where people are just like, Photoshop, no sketch, no Photoshop, no sketch. It's like,
that's still happening.
Shut up and fucking work. Like, how much time are you wasting right now? And then just the whole spec work conversation, which is going to be a topic on the show in a while. But it's just that no matter how many times it comes up, the same people can't stop fighting about it. And I've actually felt like angry and like tense in the past week after expanding my social reach. And fuck, man, it's really weird. And up until today, I was like habitually checking it. I was like, okay, what's going on now? What's going on now? And I had to stop because I wasn't getting involved. Like, I wasn't writing shit. It was just I was getting involved emotionally because I was starting to hate these people with a fucking passion because they're just so venomous and shitty all day. Which, I mean, this show is going to get venomous and shitty too. But if that's your entire day, it's just really weird. Like, at one point, you stop being a designer and then you're just a professional critic. Yeah,
it's not really a fine line. There's just a huge step you have to take to go down that weird path of pointless arguments. The only thing, like my lame Twitter feed I don't see any of that stuff, but what I see, because I tend to follow a lot of artists and illustrators.
Yeah.
Just because they're in a totally different like day zone than I am.
And their stuff is like snack size. Like, hey, here's a new thing. Like, cool. It's a picture. I like that picture.
Yeah.
Moving on. I don't have to fucking download an app to check it out and waste 20 minutes.
Like the people will post there are like a bunch of animators I'll follow, and they're just like, oh, I did this animation test. It's like, oh, that's cool. I don't do anything like that. And so it's kind of refreshing. But what I see quite often now is because I follow these artists is that art theft, but not in the terms of like somebody else coining it off as their own, but like t-shirt companies like Teespring.
Oh, fuck that. Yeah.
Will like take somebody's art. I don't know if somebody had submitted it as somebody else's or they just took it themselves, and you're like, okay, you're not even attributing the artist, and like that's shitty. And then it gets in this huge Twitter thing. And then I even found one on another site that wasn't accredited to the artist. So I reached out to them, was like, are you aware of this one? And they're like, no, thanks for letting me know. I have to talk to them now. It's like, that's what I see. And that's, it's really sad to see. And that's almost just as bad as hearing about, like, because a lot of these artists too are not, like, they don't work for a design agency. A lot of them are pretty low key and freelance.
Yeah.
So they need that money definitely more.
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to get into that kind of stuff today with Emrys about the design organizations and the members. And in the, I've been to a few meetings. They invited me to like their annual general meeting. They invited me to events and that kind of thing. And what you get is a lot of people talking shit behind each other's backs and criticizing everybody, which is really weird, which is really, it's kind of a microcosm of like Twitter that you only see if you go to this kind of stuff and you talk to the right person. So one thing that I really want to do with this stupid show is to speak honestly. Now, after I listened to the show last week when we were talking about breweries and that kind of stuff, we mentioned a couple by name and I was like, maybe that wasn't cool. But then I thought, no, fuck. Everybody talks shit on all the work in private. And if you're not willing to say it into like a recording device and then broadcast it, then maybe you shouldn't have fucking said it in the first place. I know people over the years who, when I meet them and say, hey, what's been going on? They're like, hey, did you see who this person did this work and they did this and they ripped that off and what a piece of shit. And I was like, hey, fine is good when I ask how you doing. I just really don't want to get into the politics. I've never been in the politics of the design community around here. Because it's really boring because it's just a bunch of shit talk. Yeah. So just know if we talk shit, that's like 1% of the shit we actually talk. And everybody else talks. So take it all with a grain of salt because, fuck, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. Should we crack another beer?
We should crack another beer. And we'll be back in a minute with Emrys Damon Miller. Goodbye. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're sitting down with Emrys Damon Miller. Say hello, Emrys.
Hello, Emrys.
Marcus did not say hello to you. Last week, he didn't say hi either.
I didn't realize I was supposed to. I'd say hello off mic. It's more personal that way, I think.
Yeah, it's very personal.
No, it's not.
So, the reason we have Marcus, that's the second time I've done that today. It'll happen again. The reason we have Emrys in here today is he has a few interesting things to talk about, one of them being design organizations. He has been the president of the Graphic Designers of Canada, Vancouver Island chapter for how long now?
2 to 3 years.
So
it was kind of a gray entry that I had. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're going to get into today is like we have a few topics we want to bring up, and I'm really curious. Like we've talked about the organizations quite a bit, you and I, but there's still like a lot I don't know, and I think a lot people out there aren't aware of that. Like it seems like this giant figurehead, and why am I a part of it? And then you talk to people that are in it and they love it, and it's like there's a disconnect unless you go to like a GDC event and you're able to talk to someone like yourself and have things clarified. So it's like there's a wall up, and maybe we can get that wall down a bit today, or maybe we can put a couple more bricks on top of it. So before we get into too much shit, why don't you tell everybody a bit about yourself?
My name's Emrys. I live in Victoria near the ocean with a couple kids, my wife, a dog and a cat. I run a graphic design studio that also does some visual art called Rocket Day Arts. And I've been doing that for almost 20 years. It's a small boutique studio, and we focus on work. We try to find clients where I'm authentically proud of how they contribute to the world. Does
it have to be green or just in a positive light?
Non-destructive?
Yeah, non-destructive. And so, and also for me, it's aligned with my own interests. So, for a while I was really interested in music. And so there was a lot of music clients. Then I got really interested in education. So I've been working with universities for several years. A lot of stuff that is green. So there's a lot of stuff for environmental science and environmental conservation and some activism. When I watch the news, I get pretty interested in anything that can kind of undo some of the conflict in the world. So I work with a couple peace activism groups as well. So it sort of follows my interests artistically and ethically.
And so how does that affect, I mean, you sent that page along last week, and I read the article and I watched the video. What was I can't remember the name of it. I'm blanking right now.
Oh, so I'm at the beginning of a project, and I bought a URL and put just my information up there right now, which is Graphic Design Citizen.
There you go.
graphicdesigncitizen.com, I believe.
Yeah, and we'll have that up in the show notes for everybody to check out. If you go to our website, designersartheworst.com, we'll have all the shit we talk about that has a link or a picture. We're going to have it up there for after.
Cool. And it's... I don't know where it's going to end up. I mean, what I'd love to do is that it actually becomes a hub for this journey that I'm on about thinking about how to be a good citizen of the world through graphic design. So in the future, it could be that it's interviews and profiles that I'm doing of other people that I admire, and it becomes just kind of like a holding place for these interviews or articles. Right now, it's just about me. So I traveled recently, and so I put my information up there so that I could talk about this topic that I'm interested in while traveling. Which I've only done a little bit. I've done like, I'm a good match for like undergraduate, universities to go talk to the class about the journey I've been on, because a lot of them are going to go on a similar journey shortly after they graduate.
So, when I saw you in that video and in that article, trying to liken it to my own life, how was a conversation with your wife being like, I'm going to limit the clients I have to only people that do good in the world, knowing that, and purely from like a financial standpoint, like if I took a stand with Ryan, my wife, she would be totally for it, but there would be that moment of, shit, I really hope this works out because these kids are hungry.
Yeah, well, there was some of that. I mean, not so much from my wife, but from both of us, worried about what it could mean financially. And I still feel it from my in-laws.
Sound like a fun group. I hope they're listening.
If you went out and got a real job, then
there's there's certain things that I'm proud of, which I don't boast about them at Thanksgiving dinner, because they're approaching things from another angle.
Yeah. This deadbeat is dragging our daughter down into the poorhouse with him.
No, I feel that all the time.
Yeah, but it's so. I mean, that's like a hell of a leap to take, knowing that it's not just your thing; it's like your family's thing.
Yeah,
and then it's also in-laws being like, fucking Emrys again with his like do-gooder horse shit, which is actually, it's way harder to get done, and that's why people get scared, because they want to see you do well and they don't want to see anybody struggle. So, Did you have like a bunch of contacts where you could make that leap sooner than later, where you knew there'd be a bit of cash, a bit of buffer while you're finding more people?
No, it was actually debt and stress was the path that I took.
The dream.
Yeah.
That's how we're raising the kids too.
But it was also, there was a lot of luck. So it all worked out in the end. I mean, for me, how it works is like some of the stuff I do in environmental science, for example. So I did some work for Neptune Canada, which is a UVic research program that puts observatories on the bottom of the ocean floor. So they get decent sized federal grants to do their research. And then the design budget, it's better than a mom and pop shop, as far as, I've felt more stability financially than if I had worked, in kind of like a small scale consumer market, for my clients.
Yeah. What we found over the years is that if the person's signing the check, if that money's coming out of their account, then they're super bummed out if you make like the smallest mistake. They're like, fucking like this has to work, and it's so gnarly. But if the person signing the check could give a shit because their job is signing checks, then often billing and collecting is like completely painless.
Yeah.
You don't have to justify your existence to get paid for the work that you did at the price you agreed at.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking from personal experience. Don't look at my portfolio.
That's what I've got too. I mean, I've got a small number of clients where it comes out of their own checkbook, but I think it's like less than 10%, and I don't even try to make money with them. I'm overly generous because I don't like that dynamic that you just described.
It's hard because you want to help them all the time, and then you help them so much that the help is just part of the deal now, but they still have real needs. And then when it comes in like, well, we need this by tomorrow, then like, come on, we're friends. I helped you last week. They're like, yeah, you didn't have to fucking do that. We need this now. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I screwed that up by being too nice, where from the get-go, if they couldn't afford everything that I can do for them, then it was doomed to fail.
Yeah.
So if you're approaching those clients as, well, I'm not making a buck, but it feels good to help them, then that's not a bad thing.
Well, and it's maybe there's always this balance in our profession where the smaller a client you have, the less things maybe you're going to be decision making by committee. Whereas you get into these bigger institutions and the financial stability is going to be there, but your work is going to be crippled by bureaucracy some of the time, or if not a lot of the time. So, finding that balance. I mean, these days, how I'm doing it, I'm pretty much only working for kind of institutions that have a decent amount of money. Like not a huge amount of money, but a decent amount that I don't have stress. Yeah. And it's not really a concern. Like we create fair budgets, and then I'm allowed to just work, and they're allocating the money. It's not their own money, like you're saying. But artistically, I do stuff on the side to get some of the satisfaction that maybe I used to get from smaller clients.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true, Marcus. I mean, you do the side stuff. Is that what you find too?
Yeah, it's the project types on the side are they're smaller, they're more niche, and a lot of times you have a bit more freedom to kind of go crazy creatively, that you don't feel like you're taking a huge risk, exploring every option you can. So with your side stuff, is it the same mentality of like the side kind of client stuff? Is it also focused on being green or doing good in the world?
No, it's all prostitutes and the dolphin killers from that Cove documentary.
Well, I've been fortunate. So this, like, I don't want to not acknowledge how a lot of this is luck, but I've actually had I guess it's been about 18 or 19 years of running Rocket Day now, where it's been exclusively clients that I'm proud of, and their work. But, if times change, I might sing a different tune. I was willing to make a bunch of sacrifices, but not all of them. There was limits, and I was lucky in that I got my company into good shape and, profitable enough and healthy and fun before I ran out of steam and debt and all that. Yeah.
And so what would be your like Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate? Like if Nike showed up with a check, it's like, hey, your kid's college is paid for. All you have to do is work for us for 3 months. And coming from a perspective of somebody that has a family like myself, there has to be that moment of like, oh man, maybe I just don't tell people about this one because it's going to be so good financially. And also the work could be really cool and fun, but it goes against that principle. So what's the point where you break and become like the rest of us and we're just cashing checks and on to the next one? Not all the time. That's not all we do, but you know what I mean?
Well, this is where like I can't be too high and mighty. Out of luck, I've been able to keep my company pretty much 100% pure, I could say, and it hasn't ever been compromised. But like I drove here, in a non-hybrid gas guzzling, 4-cylinder, a little wussy car, but still, I do think the world's in jeopardy from overconsumption and from burning fossil fuels and variety of risks and dangers that we're indulging in. And I indulge in half of them still. I'm still participating in a culture that's doing a lot of damage, and I choose to do so, and I find joy in it. But in my work, I've been able to
monster.
Well, you don't want to, I don't want to paint myself as a martyr. But I was definitely willing to make some sacrifices financially and some of them a bit artistically too. I mean, if you work for Coca-Cola and Nike, you can do some things artistically at the same time as making a lot of money that you can't do, working for a department at UVic. I mean, you've worked for UVic. It's not...
Yeah, I worked at the University of Victoria for 8.5 years as a designer. And the after leaving, I wrote my 2 weeks notice, my letter of resignation. All it says is I quit, see you later on it. And just had to have the date. I looked at the union bylaws. That's all it needed. And when I got out of there, the way I described it was if the Sex Pistols got hired by this big record company and they looked at it like fucking... There's money and there's, we have a rider. We get like a fruit plate at every show. This is incredible. And then they showed up at the studio and were forced to play like Nickelback songs. And we're like, no, well, I thought you liked my portfolio and the songs I played. And they're like, yeah, it's all fine and good. Just fucking do that one about the bottle again. And I just realized this is the second show in a row where I talk shit on Nickelback.
In my household, so my kids are now 14, but starting when they were quite young, there were certain words, probably when they were in daycare, they weren't allowed to say fuck and shit and such. And now we've never really forbid them from saying that, but it was taught to them by other people not to say those words. But the only word that we're not allowed to say in our house, it rhymes with Ickleback and starts with an N. But that's the only word forbidden. Yeah.
So I guess that would be the ultimate in like sacrifice if like Exxon and Nickelback came out with a collaboration and they're like, Emrys, are you in? Be like, shit. Like that's more zeros than I've seen before.
Because if Chad
Kroger,
well, he doesn't have his curly ringlets anymore.
No, he straightens. He's looking good.
Yeah, but he still has frosted tips, I think. If he came to, because he's got a comedy company now called like 604 Productions or something like that.
Yeah, he's known for being hilarious.
Yeah. In his ironic shirts. So if he came to you and said, I have this non-profit company, we do a green initiative, and I'd like you to make the site, but my name is Chad Nickelback. Is there any opposition to that?
It all depends on how desperate I am. It all depends. And this is what I mean when I say, like, I've been fortunate and I've had good luck in that, I mean, we don't, like, I open up Boulevard Magazine, which is, if anyone here is listening from outside of Victoria, which is the region that this podcast is being recorded right now. It's kind of like a luxury lifestyle magazine where, there's a lot of houses in it being sold for $5 million and above. And it's got ads for fancy flooring and lots of cosmetic surgery and fancy clothes. And that magazine represents where I think society's like gone so wrong. If that we think that that's gonna bring us happiness as anything in that magazine. So, so a lot of the sacrifices are easy for me to make because I haven't drank that Kool-Aid in a way. Like
that's not your vibe anyway. Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing in this town. It's funny because there's definitely, it took me a really long time to find the culture of people that are just making shit to make shit. And there definitely is that. I want to make it. I'm going to rip off an idea so I can get paid from these people so I can get an Audi like that guy has. And it's just that chasing the nothing that I never got. Like, I would rather not compromise myself and copy shit just so I can get like a cool watch. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I've been wearing Vans for like as long as I can remember. I'll probably die in a pair of them. I don't need like these like dainty little boots with these weird laces that are like, oh, but they're the best and they're all handmade. I'm like, really? No one should be hand making my boots. Just put it through a machine. And on the other end, like a Vans comes out and I'm like, cool, I'll take that. But that goes into what you're saying about that, like the consumerism and all that, where I'm that over time has really upset me when things are like handmade light bulbs. Like, who the fuck needs that? But at the same time, it's like, well, you're making it by hand and it's not industrialized and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like what you're saying, where you indulge in half of it, even though you're business wise, you're not too keen on being involved in it. Like, there's no way to not support it unless you just move out to like Costa Rica and fix boats for a living or something. But then even then, you got to buy a hammer.
Yeah.
So you're giving money to Stanley or somebody, or else you use a rock to pound that shit in. But like, there's a point where you're like, oh my God, I have to live like a homeless person if I want to not partake in any of this shit.
Yeah. And the reason why, like, at a lifestyle, it's easy to, scale it back, but still participate is because I want to have an enjoyable life. I want to be comfortable. But with my work, the reason why I just cut it out, like essentially like 100%, kind of uncompromised, is, in graphic design, we're a huge part of the marketing engine. And often, in a small city with small clients, we're doing marketing for them too. And so if you work with consumerism, then your job is to push overconsumption. Mm-hmm. Like if we worked for Nike, then it would be our duty, in honoring the specific contract, would be to, encourage people to buy, their seventh pair of shoes that year or that season. And so that's why, for me, I was just trying to find a way to make peace with my company, since I was going to be working in something that's so similar to marketing. And so I just decided, well, it's hurting my brain. Why don't I just avoid all consumables? Mm-hmm. So like, I don't work, with consumerism or, with, retail. So, and it's not that I think those things are bad, because I bought this shirt I'm wearing, I bought these shoes I'm wearing. But I didn't want the mark of my success in my profession or my self-satisfaction in my profession to be if I could push overconsumption even further in culture. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy way to go about it for me, in that normally, not crazy bad, just crazy. It would be like a total shift of thinking. Like, we live pretty minimally. We don't have fancy things. We don't like them. Like, we'd rather go take the kids to the beach or take them on vacation and like have fun and do something like that. we don't own watches, and we don't subscribe to like, what's it called? Dwell, that magazine where it's like,
Right.
oh, the best way to make your house look like everybody, like there's 9 million assholes that all have their house to look like this. And this is basically the how to do it. And then people are going out and buying these, $40 little plants because they saw it in a magazine and stuff. And I can't stand that kind of mentality of I saw it, I want it, because I don't
Right.
feel that way. So how do your clients, you mentioned like education, there's inherently some money making in there. It's not like totally scot-free. So what would be like the dream client for you that you can see like no attachments to consumerism or nothing that would turn you off? Not saying that your clients right now aren't great clients. If you could invent a client.
Like I said, right now my clients are the dream clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really happy with all that. So if I was to improve on this situation, it would be, sometimes working in a small town. This podcast is being recorded in Victoria, which is about 300,000 people.
Yep.
You're really limited with what you can do with the size of the budgets. So there was one point where I was shortlisted for a job at the Smithsonian Institute,
Mm-hmm.
and it was for a folk music festival. So I had done work for the folk music festival here in Victoria in the Inner Harbor. We used to have one. I think it closed down 10 to 15 years ago, but I worked on it a bunch when I just started my company. So I had this portfolio of folk music festivals, which in this case, it's not folk music like Peter, Paul, and Mary. It's folk music. It's a multicultural festival. So it was hosted by the Intercultural Association that they help refugees find homes when they arrive and stuff. So it was really about multiculturalism, not about folk music.
So it was like that section in the record store just called World Music.
Yes.
Where it's like, I'm playing a gourd. I have a washboard. Like, what is this? I don't know. Folk?
Yeah.
But a lot of it's really good, but it's just that kind of like bringing people together kind of thing.
And this Smithsonian job, which I didn't get, but I got to go to the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. and get interviewed, and I got a taste of what it would be like working there. They gave me a tour of the whole facilities and everything, but their festival, it was just like ours, but like the Dalai Lama and Yo-Yo Ma were on the small scale creative directing committee.
That's cool.
The year before I was interviewed, they had a Silk Road themed year, and they have I think it was 2 or 3 million people come. So just the scale of it, and the caliber of the people you get to collaborate in other cities sounds exciting to me. So that's what I don't have right now. Right now, if I was to do again something for like a multicultural folk festival, the budget it was 4 digits, the budgets that I was working with for the full festival, for making a program guide, posters, T-shirts, like everything was under 10,000, maybe even half that.
Yeah, I was about to jump in and correct you, being like, that can't be right, because $1,000 is 4 digits, and it's for the Smithsonian. That's gnarly.
Well, no, the Smithsonian was like a full-time position at like 90 grand. No, I'm talking about what Victoria was. So, but you need to make, you didn't have to make that many more things for the Smithsonian. You just had a much bigger budget and more facilities to make those things. So you could, for the craft of graphic design, you could make, much richer material.
Yeah. We did a fairly large project for a big museum in America. I think it's 16 square acres. It was this huge museum, and they did an exhibition in partnership with Google. And we're like, oh, this is crazy. We're going to be dealing with these people and these people. And we're going to meet people that do these huge things. But it's funny because we were working from a distance. We talked to the 2 guys that were basically responsible for making us making sure our work gets done. So we had no access to like the big fancy Google people. and the guys we were dealing with were like super, super nice, but they were in between us and these people that are putting on these multi-million-dollar exhibitions. So we had a bunch of Skype calls, and basically we saw them drinking like a Diet Pepsi in a room with no windows. And we're like, oh, the work's fun and the project's going well, but it feels less prestigious. And I wonder if that would have been the case if you got in there, if you would have been, which you'll find out in a lot of projects, is like, oh, there's going to be a lot of notoriety. You're going to meet these people, but at the end of the day, it's a job. And your job isn't meeting people and like playing squash with Yo-Yo Ma. So it's cool that you're like, oh, is this the chair he sat in? They're like, yeah, he's never coming back. You're like, shit. Like, and now get all that work done. You're like, damn it. Like, so yeah, I mean, that's cool that you were able to make that shift and it's working for you. I would be mildly terrified to make that shift. What about you?
That would be, well, no. Actually, that would be detrimental to my living conditions. Yeah, I got bills to pay. I can't sacrifice ethics at this point.
Yeah,
though maybe I should be clear. I mean, so Marcus, you work with Pixel Union, right? And so you're making sometimes digital themes, right?
Yeah.
For Shopify or for Tumblr,
not
types of things.
Me specifically, but the company itself is, yeah.
So in the case of Tumblr, that might pass through my scrutiny test because you're not making physical things and pushing them for the sake of luxury and overconsumption.
So like he's not making the planet smaller by making something digital.
Yeah, and I mean, in the case of like a Tumblr theme, I mean, that's just kind of like a vanity artistic thing that communities often play with, right? Or individuals. That Shopify could be different, but what are your thoughts?
But you could be the devil's advocate and all that and say, well, you have to buy a theme, so there's consumerism there, and then the servers, are they green servers or are they huge carbon emitting servers?
There's a long tail of shit attached to it.
Yeah.
But I would also, I mean, think of a guy that designs a shovel, a new kind of inexpensive shovel, and he pictures people off in, Guadalajara building homes for people that don't have money and all that. And then some guy walks in Home Depot, is like, man, I hate my neighbor and I want to put this through his thorax. And he goes, and he like, you can have the best intentions with any product, but it's really ultimately what the user does with them.
Yeah, the best thing is to never actually find out what your users are using with your product. Real or physical or digital doesn't matter. Just don't ever find out because you'll be horrified.
Yeah, just close your eyes and hope people aren't true monsters with your creations, which,
yes.
I mean, we've designed stuff for beer and all that. There had to be one guy out there that had too many and it took his day out on his dog or something, but I don't want to think about that. We just made a cool bottle. Like,
right.
And on that note,
beer.
Sure.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk to Emrys about graphic design organizations and why they are good or the devil. Welcome back, everybody, from that music that you just enjoyed. And don't go on the YouTube free music library because you won't find it.
No, that's original.
Yeah, I originally found that on YouTube a little while ago. It's pretty good. So you're back with Matt, Marcus, and Emrys. And now we're going to be talking about, we just spoke about Emrys's tactics and with his clients, and it's making me feel not bad about my clients. Because none of our clients are like evil, but yeah, I'm gonna I'm going to eyeball the next one that comes through a little more carefully.
And before we go to the next topic, I should put a footnote on it. And I should say, I encourage everyone to do this, but that it should be based on your own ethics. So like some people...
I have the worst ethics.
Well, then
I can be with anybody.
You can have the worst clients. Yeah.
You just the key is never have a portfolio, and they'll never show up there.
Well, if that Martin Scorelli guy gets out of jail, he's going to need someone to sell his medication online, and I think I know the right man for the job.
I heard he's pretty good with money,
and I heard that people love his face. Jurors were in that trial and were opting out of it because they hated his face, and they didn't even know what he did yet. So Martin Scorelli, the guy that bought the rights to HIV or AIDS medication, and it was $13 a pill, and he beefed it up to like $750 a pill.
Yeah.
So
real class act.
Oh, yeah. Just a true treasure in the treat. So yeah, please go out and make your client list a little more good for the world, depending on what your world looks like.
And more so, I'd
don't
say...
take any of Emrys's clients.
Yeah, don't take any of my clients.
He was good first.
What was annoying me was people like sort of working for the man. They might put in scare quotes and during the day, and then they would like try to give back to make up for it afterwards. And I thought, I actually read like a Medium post that summed it up quite well. That it said, but now I'm not going to be able to. Remember how I phrased it.
If you make it up, we won't question this.
Yeah, we don't fact check anything. Fact.
You could almost compare it to going about your day murdering or committing other sins, and then at night you go to your Catholic church and confess your sins to the priest.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that'll work for charities like 10% of the time, and then and make a lot of money with clients they feel mixed about 90% of the time. And so I just think if you can afford it, then make some sacrifices and only work for clients you feel great about.
The only thing I don't want to keep going on this. The only thing I'll say is that my time when I usually draw the line is if I question somebody about their product and then they say like, oh, it's exactly like so and so. It's like, and it's like, no, that's it.
But it's more expensive. Like,
it's a different color. Oh,
yeah. No, if it's a ripoff, I can't be involved in it.
No.
So the last segment was actually kind of a perfect segue into what we want to talk about now, and your leadership in the Graphic Designers of Canada in the Vancouver Island chapter, where basically you came out with your nice idea and your nice methodology of getting clients that are good for the world and all that kind of stuff. And then we tried to poke holes in it to see what was wrong with it. And based on every event I've been to for the GDC, you put in a lot of time, and prior presidents have put in a lot of time. Like Aaron Heppel was the one prior to you.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's not a paid position.
No.
And it's really, it sucks because it's, what I've seen is people are waiting for you to fuck up to be like, yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way. Instead of like I'm not a member of the group. I go to a bunch of the events because I think you put on cool events.
Thank you.
But maybe if I gave you money and that event was what I was getting, I'd be like, well, this is all I fucking get. Because I hear that from people.
Yeah.
Like, what do I get? What do I get? What do I get? It's like, you get this guy running his ass off for almost 3 years, trying to make things that you won't hate.
Yeah.
So how's that been going?
Well, it's been going. I mean, so far things have been fantastic, but I feel like I'm running out of steam now.
Yeah.
Which I think I even openly said at the last event.
Yeah, the last event was Stefan Sagmeister's The Happy Film. And Emrys came up to speak to Ryan and I, and kind of casually he was like, hey, maybe you want to be president now. I was like, hey, maybe when's this movie start? So it's a thankless job that
I wouldn't
takes
say
a lot
it's
of time.
I think it's different for everyone. I mean, so I can describe my experience, and it's going to be totally different than what other people have experienced. Well, not totally, but I mean, for me, so I've been a member of this organization for I think about 14 years.
Oh,
I can say because I think I became the same year my kids were born, which is how I can remember.
Okay.
So for me, I joined them initially. I found the money because I wanted to go to a conference in Japan, and the discount on the ticket, if you were a GDC member, more than made up for the cost of becoming a GDC member. Okay. So it wasn't out of pocket the first year. So that helped my entry, to not have to figure out the finances. And then I started making friends there, and I've supported the organization or been a part of it for these 14 years. And the last 3 years I've been on what's called the executive, which it's the board of the nonprofit. But the way we've been running is it means you're like a super volunteer. You volunteer this huge amount of hours. Everyone on the board is running the organization as volunteers. They aren't like advising and then it goes to paid staff to execute. They're doing all the execution too. So that's why I'm tired after 3 years. But what I've experienced, I've loved the last 3 years. So it's the question mark is about how, can this be made sustainable? And I am stumped. This is a huge challenge because I think what's happened with a lot of past people, and this is what I'm feeling like right now, is you come in with some enthusiasm and things you want to do, and you do it for a bunch of time, and then you burn out. For me, it's been a lot of fun, mostly just because I had this wish list. I mean, I'd gone to international conferences. I went to this one in Japan. It was a world congress called Visualog, which was organized by the World Graphic Design sort of conglomerate. It was used to be called Icograta. Now it's called ICOD. And I went to
saw that. Yeah. Yeah. And the logo kind of looks like a text message penis. Look up ICOD and you'll go, oh, yeah, I can totally see. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw it. But which I don't know if it's intentional. It's pointing to the right. I don't know if that has any significance with that.
I'm not going to comment, but now I'm probably never going to be able to unsee it.
Well, once you see one, you've seen them all.
Yeah. But yeah, so I went to these conferences. I love them. I went to one in Havana, Cuba. I went to a small one in Seattle. I've also been to the 99U, which is in Manhattan. Yeah, the same people that built Behance built 99U. And it's a conference I've been to maybe 5 or 6 times in Manhattan. And I don't have a lot of money. So this is 90% of my fun budget in the last 20 years has gone to going to interesting places to a conference, a graphic design conference.
Without your family.
Without my family until this year. This was the first year I'm starting to bring kids.
Awesome.
And once I brought my wife. Yeah. But this is terrible that I can't rewind and redo this.
We're not even recording. It's fine.
Okay. Oh, sure. Okay.
So
cool. Oh, but so this is to say I saw all these things, and then, we live in this small town, and I had this wish list of wouldn't it be cool if Victoria had, this kind of event or that kind of event. And so what's been fun about the last 3 years is just kind of going through my personal wish list and things that I kind of wanted to see in my hometown. I could make them happen. And that's how I think these organizations often should work, is that if people come in as, heavy volunteers, that's the big benefit of it, is it becomes a rewarding kind of personal project that gets to be a community project.
And so one thing that I've always known about you since first meeting, we probably met at a Renegades meeting forever ago. A group I started a long time ago that I half-ass abandoned. But we're going to do something with it at some point. But Emrys would always talk about these conferences that he would go to and stuff I've never heard of. and he's talking about the 99U, and he's talking about going to Japan and these kind of things. And you always struck me as somebody that is seeking out a design community or people that are thinking about cool things and wanting to be a part of it and to come up with something with those people that are all congregating to be in a big pile and be like, okay, let's see what we can do. So when you became president of the GDC for Vancouver Island, it wasn't that surprising because you've always wanted to be a part of that from my eyes, but you used to go to the conferences and now you kind of run them. So how has your opinion changed at all? Or maybe it hasn't. Probably a lot more appreciation for people that put conferences on.
Yeah. Well, and that's, it's interesting. What I like right now is, so I just got back from the national gathering of all the GDC, the Graphic Designers of Canada, has local chapters all across Canada. Mm-hmm. And once a year we get together in a host city for 3 days of like a formal annual general meeting and then a bunch of brainstorming and a lot of drinking and eating. And there is a camaraderie between all the people that have like weathered this like Uber volunteering in order to make these projects come together. Mm-hmm. There's maybe similar to Brothers in Arms in some kind of weird way. Obviously much lighter than Warzone, but you do push yourself to exhaustion, not to any danger, but there's a camaraderie that there's kind of like these knowing glances and nods as you're like sharing some of the stories in your hometown of events that you've put on.
Well, it's like POWs that have never met. They give each other a big hug and be like,
yeah,
I've been there, brother. And they just kind of keep walking. So with your experience of running or being involved in the Graphic Designers of Canada and then running a chapter of it, what was the single most difficult part of it?
Well, so far it hasn't come. It's because I've just been procrastinating it. So now it's arrived. So it's how, like, all I've done so far is had fun going through my personal wish list of what would be cool to see in this city. Mm-hmm. And it's been a really great kind of umbrella to do that under, the Graphic Designers of Canada. I'm there at a time where I just had a lot of support and no resistance. I still had people thinking independently and challenging, and it would help. We'd talk through things and come up with a even better solution. So it's not that it was devoid of other leaders, but everything was just so smooth and so pleasant. That's not always the case. I hear that like there's a lot of, pain and arguing and egos and stuff in this kind of territory. But I didn't experience any in the last 3 years. It's been an awesome 3 years.
That's great.
So, but all I've done is have fun making these events. And now I've got to figure out how to be a good president as far as membership, as far as like a sustainable vision that doesn't, tax the volunteer board so unreasonably, and
you don't want to trump it when it goes to the next guy. Well, you want another Obama in leading it.
Yeah.
So with this change and everything, is there kind of like an overarching idea from the GDC, or is it kind of like everybody has their own idea of like how to move memberships and things like that, or what to do for events?
So like I said, it's a collective of these regional bodies, like all across the country, and there's a whole lot of diversity between the regions, but also just between presidents within a region. So like I do things different than Aaron did before me, and that's different from the previous presidents of Valerie and Kirsty. Like everyone's got a different personality, and so they're approaching these things philosophically differently too. There's definitely a lot of shared opinions, but yeah, so I don't know how I would say it, but I'd maybe say it like it feels like about half of our sentiments are shared and universal across the country, and half is allowed to be unique and diverse. And everyone's into it for different reasons. So like for me, there's one of the big things about the Graphic Designers of Canada is we actually certify graphic designers. So you can become a member at a tier where you submit a portfolio that also includes the rationale behind all the pieces. And your peers review it in private and decide whether you are a fit professional graphic designer. And once you get accepted by your peers, then when I say your peers, I mean the community of professional graphic designers. Then you get letters after your name. So I'm Emrys Damon Miller, CGD, for Certified Graphic Designer. So that is hugely important to a lot of people, but it's not to me. So this is where like people go to the organization for different reasons. I mean, what I wanted to see is we had Matt here at an event, Art of the Beer Label, a little over a year ago. A few months ago, we had Art of the Gig Poster. And these are events that I wanted to see him in my hometown. I wanted us to have a night where we got 120 people in a room drinking beer and admiring the history of our gig posters in the city. So that was why I went to the GDC, and it was a perfect venue or hosting body for this.
So what do you find that most members get from the membership and then having the GDC letters?
And this was a question from Twitter as well. I got asked today. So there are two people. There's Marcus and at Patrick Foster on Twitter wants to know this as well.
At Patrick Foster. That sounds like a VIU graphic design teacher.
Yeah, he heads the graphic design program up there.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And he may be trying to justify it for students.
Well, this is where I'd like you to interview me in half a year when I figure out how to sell this better.
So one thing I'll say is that every time we've gone to a GDC event, and we've been to a bunch of them, I'm not a member, but I'm glad they're here because Victoria's an artsy town. It's not a designy town where there are design events and design groups to be a part of. There's these art shows where everybody goes and they stand with their back towards the art and talk to the people they've talked to 1,000 times, and the artist wonders why nobody's turning around. It's a really weird thing where people want to be seen at the shows, but they could honestly give a shit about it. But when Emrys, or I guess Aaron, before you started spending the money, and that traditionally hadn't been spent in the city, there were events coming up that I was like, oh, that actually looks kind of cool. I think there's a type event at the university. I think you were probably president for that one, or maybe it could have been Aaron. But it's just all of a sudden there are these design events with things that you recognize being featured, where instead of being like, oh, well, there's Gus and he whittles like seagulls out of driftwood and we're putting on an event to interview him. Like, well, who gives a shit about Gus? But when you're bringing in these big speakers and these big films or big topics or like these traveling shows, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's starting to feel more like a design town. And I've been designing in this town for 17 years, something like that. And it never felt like designers lived here until a bigger event started happening.
Right.
So I enjoy the GDC for that. Membership wise, I think you put it really good at the last event at the Happy Film, where I've asked you to justify it to me probably 8 times since we've known each other. Like, you should be a member. You should be a member. I'm like, fucking, why should I be a member? And then you put it great at the last one. You said, you don't really get a lot out of it other than we can't do this stuff without you.
Yeah.
So you give us $5, you get $2 out of it, kind of thing. But you get to do this shit that unless you pool this money, you cannot bring this show here. You cannot bring this film here.
Exactly.
So you're putting a down payment on hoping that the current president of your chapter is going to make cool decisions.
Yeah, and there's a whole other realm which I've been less involved with, but also is quite important, is, because it's a national nonprofit that all these chapters are a part of. We also shape the profession, the Graphic Designers of Canada, and all the other national groups like AIGA in the States. I mean, just things like copyright. Those kinds of things exist. Copyright as a notion exists, because professionals banded together and said to the government, we need certain things to be in place in order for our profession to make sense, in order for us to do our job well. And so this is that umbrella for Canada. Mm-hmm. And so we have an international voice, we have a local voice, we have a national voice. And so that's something that it's also important. I mean, if no one joined, hypothetically, there would be no one telling the government, we should have copyright. Yeah, so, or what it is these days, because a lot of those battles have already been won. Now it's saying, you shouldn't have spec contests in order to, as the main way to, solicit design if you've got $1 million in the bank.
And social media seems to be on reruns when it comes to spec work, because anytime it's posted, everyone has the same argument. And my point of view is, then don't take part.
Well, I'm somewhere in the middle as well. Like, I'm not as hardcore about it as even the organization I belong to is, but where I feel it should be at least a conversation point is like, let's say the Canada 150. I actually don't really mind that Canada 150, our logo was made as a contest, because for me, and this is heresy for me to say this, especially as a president on a recording, but because, if there was ever a time for there to be a cultural jam from the broadest community, it would be when the nation is celebrating something communal like this.
Yeah.
But the counter argument is, if, the food vendors and the people setting up tents and the people performing in front of legislature, if there's already millions and millions and millions already being spent, or tens of millions or hundreds of millions, then someone should speak up and say, why are you asking for it for free only from the graphic designers? And every other discipline gets paid properly. Yep, so that's where it is important to have a national body that brings that up in a conversation.
Well, according to the news, the government spent, was it $1 million on the app, the Canada 150 app?
That we're all using nonstop.
And Jen looks at me and she's like, you should make apps. It's like, I don't have those skills to earn $1 million for one app. But going, based off of that kind of spec contest work for the 150, you look at even Vancouver, or the city of Vancouver, and now the city of Edmonton, I think they hired design firms, and what they produce is now under the scrutiny of everyone, and people just lose their mind, go, you spent 15 grand on that logo and I could have made something just as good. And it's like, okay, well, if we sourced it and did spec work, then that community would say, you shouldn't be doing that. You should pay somebody appropriately. So yeah, there is and
it's really the way I've seen it, especially from the government, and they do it in the States as well, is they think it's fun for people to come up with pictures that can be turned into something. If they're like, hey, everybody, kids out there, submit your fully developed app for our consideration, they would get zero, but they wouldn't get anything. But some idiot with drawing on a napkin with a Sharpie can come up with a good idea. And that is an easy win for them to be inclusive. But I also see why don't you open source the hot dogs you serve at the thing? It's because everyone's going to shit themselves because these are weird hot dogs from this weird guy. But when it comes to a drawing or a picture, and I'm sure you guys have both hit this in the past, especially with branding, if you try and do a simple mark, and then they see it, they really like it, and they're like, it just feels really simple. Like I feel I could have come up with this. And you're like, no, you couldn't have, because you don't know why things have to be the way they are. So there's that aspect of, if you open it up, there's a chance it's going to be wrong. But then even with a skilled studio, there's a chance that nobody's going to like it. So it's from my perspective, it would be if Justin Trudeau ran by the office here in his like Speedo and his tank top and his jogs. He's like, hey, bro, we're going to pay you X amount for this logo. There's a part of me that would say, we'll give you a discount if you don't put our name on it, because everyone's going to fucking hate it because it's new and pictures are so subjective. So you can say, I don't like that picture. Like, okay, what about this app? You're like, yeah, it's weird, but it works. So a picture can't work. It only works if they like it, I guess. So I know, like we have a show coming up at some point, and we're only going to talk about spec work. And please come back for it, because we have more microphones. We want to get everybody just fucking mad. But yeah, so you're talking about the graphic designers of Canada and how they stand up for potentially people that are being exploited for the work they do and not being compensated properly. So getting into national bodies, I've only heard stories that in Canada there's the GDC and then there's the RGD, the Association of Registered Graphic Designers. I don't know why it's not the ARGD. ARGD.
I think it's just registered. I don't think it's association.
Oh, I looked it up today and it said Association of.
Was it capitalized? The association.
Some of it was. I think one in the middle. So
Semantics.
I've heard that the RGD was started as a counter to the GDC for people that wanted a different type of organization, and they felt their voices weren't being heard, which is any organization. Everybody starts a new thing. I mean, we're talking on a podcast that we started because we didn't connect with what was out there.
Right. I think that might be just a rumor. So I don't know the full details, but my understanding is the GDC used to have a bunch of Ontario chapters. And I don't know if it was 15 years ago, give or take. But the Ontario chapters broke off from the GDC and merged and became the RGD. And one of the key reasons wasn't so much about the tone. Actually, I don't know. What I was told, and makes sense historically, is they created this registered program. So it's similar to this certified graphic designer and the letters after your name that I just mentioned. But we've only been doing that for a short while. Nationally, the Ontario chapters broke off and formed the RGD and did it right. They did it like 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah. So that was the differentiating thing. And then there was bad blood between the two groups.
Yeah, there's beef.
But it seems to be right now, like I said, I've been here for a very great time. So even right now, there's dialogue and collaboration between these two recently antagonistic competing groups, and now we're collaborating. So I'm very happy with the current direction. I hope it lasts and just goes deeper. I mean, if personally, I think it would be great if they merged again one day. Just because Canada's not all that huge of a population, and you see what's done in the States with the AIGA, the American Institute of Graphic Arts, and they there's something to be said for people, you know, if they've got the exact same mandate and they're in the same region, just pooling their resources. Yeah.
So you're in favor of a dictatorship?
I'm always in favor of a dictatorship.
On this show, we call them penis potatoes. Yep.
That one's called a thinker.
I thought of that one when that movie came out, The Dictator, and I say it probably once every 2 weeks because it delights me.
And you say,
I just got it now.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by
it's a slow burn. Someone call it a stinker. So one thing that I really wanted to touch on, and Marcus, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to get into too. Like we got time. I just wanted to get into the notion that's been traveling around for a long time about a graphic designers union. And should we unionize? And how the hell would you get all these people together?
Well, maybe that's what the Graphic Designers of Canada sort of is. I mean, it philosophically has some similarities to that. Mm-hmm. So, how you recruit people, this is where I'm at a loss. Like I said, I've got my history of the last 3 years. I've been president, kind of neglecting certain parts of my responsibilities and focusing just on, I wanted to bring events that were relevant to the community. That was, and I feel happy about what's been done, but now I've got to focus on, answering these questions that you're asking. And I've got my own issues with the answers because I'm only sold on the parts that resonate with me. So it's hard for me to sell the things that don't resonate with me. So for me, what it comes down to, and I think I said this when we had Sagmeister's Happy Film, was to me it's similar to putting your curbside recycling out on the side of the road for the city to pick it up rather than it just going into the landfill, or like voting in a provincial election. You don't get an immediate return on investment as an individual, but if everyone does it, the whole society benefits. Which means the individuals benefit too, indirectly. So that's how I think this thing has to work and has to be sold, is that it's an opt-in kind of, in a way. I feel like, graphic designers, we make anywhere from like $25,000 a year to $125,000 a year. So for us to give $300 of that to an organization that's going to help elevate the whole profession and take care of each other and stuff, even at the $25,000 a year, it's not a huge amount. So
with that, currently it's like a few $100 to become a member, and that helps put on events. Wouldn't it inherently be more if there was a union to contribute to then? Because I've had union jobs where they just take $150 off every check, and it goes into something that you don't really know about. And then once in a while people strike and say, oh, work was fine until I remembered I was in a union and now I don't go to work. So I get the incentive of pooling people together and, let's get cheap healthcare because the more we buy, the cheaper it'll be.
Right.
I get that union mentality when it comes to design. The thing that I always want to just smack people about is when they're talking about, and if we unionize and we can make all the rates standard.
That's a terrible idea.
It's fucking dumb. Because if you're terrible, then why are you making any money? And if you're really good, why are you making as much as somebody who's terrible? I've only heard that argument from people whose work is maybe not something we would look for in a contractor. And so what are your thoughts on standards, like both you guys, I'll talk better one day, standardization of rates?
I think it's terrible.
Yeah, me too. For a lot of the criticisms I have of capitalism, this part of it I like. I think that, I guess I want a mixture of camaraderie and taking care of each other and healthy competition. And so, I definitely would want to keep the healthy competition because I think it helps keep the craft or the profession vibrant and keeps people improving themselves, and also some people are going to be more talented than others, and that can be just part of life. And
I think there's a side to that of the business side of things of valuing yourself in your skill ability, because if you have the confidence in what you're doing and you've been doing it for a while, you can value your work a lot higher and be confident about that price. Whereas if everybody's rate was the same, somebody who's been in it for 6 months would be like, well, this is the rate that I charge and I make diarrhea happen on the screen. But you got to pay for it because it's the same as that person's over there.
Yeah, and it's also expanding it outward. And I've heard this argument so many times about how it should all be standardized, and we don't have access to the big contracts that other companies have, and we shouldn't be paid less because we don't have their network and their contacts, which to me is horseshit, because most people who have a huge network with a lot of contacts, they always have their ear open. They're always striking up conversations. It's a job when you're not working to create this huge network. So why would a person kind of spectating get a reward for it? Like, if you subscribe to the NBA channel on Apple TV, when LeBron James wins a championship, he doesn't drive to your house and say, "We got you a ring too, thanks for watching." Like, get out. First of all, you're on a couch. You're doing the opposite that he's doing. He's worked really hard, and he's achieved this level and should be rewarded for but the inherent ability and also the hard work. So I don't know why I'm trying to convince you of something. We're all fucking on the same page with this thing.
Yeah.
Now you listen to me. Like, we're all agreeing.
And the other thing about the NBA is this.
Bring back Daniel Stern if he's alive.
Well, I like, it's interesting that the hustle is part of being a graphic designer. And I like it. Because what I've witnessed has been great. I mean, this is just one small pocket of the world. And so I don't want to say this is the way it is around the world, but from this southwest corner of Canada, whether you're poor or rich, you're at a pretty similar playing field. It comes down to hustle. And if you've got different personalities, there's different positions. You can become an employee with more stability, or you can be an entrepreneur with, more adventure, and you can kind of pick along the spectrum. I think it's a privileged, kind of nice place to be, being a graphic designer in this part of the world. So it's not something I feel we need to fix. Yeah.
I feel with the kind of going back to the GDC in general and those type of associations, I feel like a lot of those sites and kind of the information dump, they don't I feel like they should tell you what it's not. And kind of in contrast to what it is and what it does do. Because talking to you now, it's definitely more convincing. Like, I feel more inclined to join now than before.
Yay.
Just because
I completely agree.
No, because going to the site, like, you immediately go to benefits and you're like, I don't see it. I don't get it. But if you went to a site and this is what it's not, this is not a job finder, this is not what have you. So it's clear. And it's like what it is, it's a community. It's you want to see this in your town or area, then this is what you're helping fund. And if you want it and you're not seeing it, then here's your chapter president and things like that. So
or even become the chapter president. That's the thing is it's what I like about it is it's democratic and it can evolve. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially, this is our national umbrella for the graphic design community. And it's got sponsors, it's got most of the T's crossed and the I's dotted as far as, we're a collection of nonprofits across the country, and we're also a not-for-profit nationally. So it's the structure's all there. So if you want to do anything within any kind of graphic design community, it's the perfect umbrella for it, is what my experience has been. But like I said, I've been there for like this really pleasant time.
Yeah. But I think that speaks to how you act in these events and in the stuff that I've seen, is that you're very welcoming. You're very like, everybody show up and everybody's cool. And if you're not a member, the tickets are a little bit more, but don't worry about it. And we just want everybody to come, where I felt like the old guard was more, and this is no joke. Someone invited me, I don't even know, 12, 13 years ago or something like that, to be at an event, like not to speak or anything, just to like, hey, you should show up. I think it was like a recruitment. They're inviting people from around the city. And there was no joke. I was the only one not wearing a black turtleneck. And I felt like I was like in art school, and I walked in there with like my wiener hanging out of my pants being like, let's paint something. And I felt dumb for being there.
Everybody had their iPods out and you had a Zune.
Yeah. Yeah. which I drew on a piece of cardboard. But it was really, it felt like the old vision of what a designer is. You know, the glasses, the turtleneck, very cold to everybody else. Like I was invited and I showed up and I walked around and there was like free beer. So I had a bunch of that, but it was really like, so one of these people has to be the person who invited me, but nobody said hello. So I was like, well, this sucks and it's stupid and it confirmed all my beliefs and I want to leave after I have another free beer. And then when Aaron, your predecessor, came in, it was more like how you have it now. It was super welcoming. Even if you weren't part of the organization, you felt like you were welcome at the event.
Yeah, I've been to one total event and I felt welcomed. I wanted to go to the movie, but I was away. So that doesn't help my story. But
it's like true Facebook. Hey, we're having a barbecue. And then the first 5 people, oh, we can't make it. We're in Vancouver. I'm like, fucking don't say anything. Just say, what can I bring if you're coming? But don't go to your way to tell me you're not coming. The worst.
Now I feel bad. Thanks.
No, but as soon as I bought tickets for the Happy Film, I sent a link to Marcus and he went, oh, fuck, I'm out of town because it was on a Friday.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of like spreading the word of design events that are cool, that anybody can go to. It's a GDC was able to get the money to put this on and you got to pay a bit when you get in there. But the thing is you get to see it. Like you could go see any number of like shitty superhero movies for more than it costs to go to that film. Like I think it was by donation and I think I did $10 a ticket. And I was like, I feel like I'm like cheaping out, but at the same time, like, it said by donation. Like I could have done 5.
Could have put in a can of peas.
I'm an asshole.
You didn't say money.
Can of peas. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you guys have made it more of a design town. Because it really didn't feel like that before.
Well, I love hearing
I'll
that.
Never be a member. So one thing I wanted to ask you.
That's okay. I'm just going to tell everyone that you are a member, and not only that, you're on the executive. You're our
fantastic. I'll continue to have zero contact with all those people.
You'll never be president, but you'll be the El Presidente.
Yeah,
the honcho.
Yes.
The jefe
of the Luchador chapter.
There you go. It's up on the wall.
I want to go back. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no.
I just want to go back to the union thing.
Yep.
So the one thing that the GDC does do that I think does make sense, and this comes to the spec work, is if there's like let's say a government with a lot of money putting on a spec contest, which has happened on the federal level in recent times. Then and this is where the GDC and the RGD, one of the times that they first teamed up recently is they both teamed up to tell all their members, like, please, none of you participate in this. So in a way, it was a mini strike. It was, and if there was, like, let's say, 50 or more percentage of the graphic designers in Canada belonged to these organizations, which they don't. But if it was that high, then that actually has a huge influence on that amount of designers politically choosing not to participate in something. So that's, in a way, that's like a union strike in a really gentle way. But that's what I think makes sense and has been happening.
Then they pick some creep from Deviant Art with a sideswept haircut. He's like, I made one, it's a dying leaf. You're like, oh shit, I guess it's the only one we got. so really, by ending up with like a horrible choice, maybe it'll inspire them to engage the community professionally rather than comically. So you mentioned that you're pretty tired, not from the thing we talked about off air, which we won't talk about. But
thank you.
But it's a lot of effort and it's a lot of time on top of a family, on top of a company. I mean, when you asked me, I think it was like a year and a bit ago, like, do I want to split it with you, the presidency? I was like, nope, because I know I'm going to ruin it because I don't have the follow through because I don't have the drive to do it. But you do, and you've been from my perspective, very successful at what you've done because you've treated designers as cool designers for the most part, rather than like, here's another letterpress presentation. Like, yes, we get things were done, and we also used to have like coaches and buggies, but we're not doing coach and buggy like drifting competitions. Like, shit moves on, and we got to get current, or else it's just going to be really, really out of touch. And I think that was a point of view about the GDC and other organizations like national ones in Canada and the States, was that there was a point where they're just out of touch and they had to like hip it up or you're going to lose members. So with I'm going to say just the fact that you're happy at the end of the 3 years, that to me means you were personally successful with it and you're not totally bummed out on it. So for the next person who will eventually take your spot one day, or for somebody in Kentucky thinking about heading up a local chapter of the AIGA, or an RGD person in Ottawa who just got elected, what would you tell them they should do in order to have a good time and not get bummed out?
Oh man. I don't have an answer, except I'll just mention my own personal take. So this, they'd have to be built like me in order for this answer to be relevant to them. But for me, I only did projects. Out of luck, I only had to do projects that I was personally excited about. So, I just lucked out, and it meant it was easy to find the hours to volunteer. So, one of the more historical people, old-fashioned, that you might have just been dissing, but that
turtleneck.
Well, not the turtle. Well, but one of the more reputable type people that we brought a while ago was Robert Bringhurst to do an intimate book design masterclass, and that was so we've done kind of like a mixture of the poster event that we did was mostly like a punk poster exhibition. Like,
which I was bummed I couldn't go to. I was having acupuncture done that night, and then they...
you didn't want to go with the needles?
No, I was totally fine with that. And then the guy adjusted my knee, which resulted in me about a month ago having knee surgery. So the Art of the Gig poster, I think, was March 2nd.
Yeah.
And that was a night that the man... I haven't been able to walk properly since that night.
Oh, man.
So I'm glad you have good memories because it's fucking nightmare for me. But anyway.
Yeah, so for me,
like
it was always, I found it was projects. I was really excited to have exposure to Robert Bringhurst. Mm-hmm. I was really excited to celebrate Victoria's history of punk and independent posters. And so, because these were projects that I was personally excited about, it was easy to find the hours. And then how I blended it with work and with family, as I just found ways to mix them together. So my kids worked the door at both Art of the Gig poster and Art of the Beer label. So they were checking people's ID and turning them away if they weren't 19. My kids were 13 at the time. And they've been to half the events. The way I've blended it with work, I was actually doing a music poster early last season. And so, I invited my clients. I said, I'm hosting this or co-hosting this event, Art of the Gig poster, just celebrating local music posters. And that built my clients saw me as, a leader in that particular genre that I was simultaneously selling my expertise to them. Yeah. So it all blended together, the work life that it was stealing time away from, the family life that it was stealing time away from. I was able to sneak some of it back together. Yeah.
And so would you say, consider what the members want and then try to marry that with what you want in order to get the steam to do it? Because I don't get the sense that every event and every act was a selfish act on your part, because you are thinking about the community and stuff that they'll dig too.
Oh yeah. No, if it was selfish in a way that was devoid of community, then I would have just done it in my own house,
I was
just myself.
gonna say, if I was running and it's like, we're doing another event where Matt plays video games at night after the kids are in bed, and it's $800 a ticket because there's only like 4 spots on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah, this, I mean, I was excited about the whole package, which included all the people I got to collaborate with. So like, you know, Joey was my collaborator. Joey McDonald was my collaborator on Art of the Gig poster.
Yeah, and he's going to be an upcoming guest on this.
I'm looking forward to that. So just collaborating with him was something that I thought would be fun. So yeah, there was, it's kind of weird to talk about whether it's selfish or not if selfishly you're excited about collaboration. So, but yeah, I mean, my advice to others, the only thing I can offer is my own experience, which is like, I found it rewarding and I found the hours and I always found it fun because I lucked out with, the scenario I was in. Yeah. So I would encourage other people to find that. And also I liked the people I didn't want it to be formal. So like all of our formal meetings were casual and around a table with food and drink and at someone's house that we liked.
Then a bunch of them were also before events.
Well, those are the really formal meetings. And those also we tried to keep as casual as we could while still honoring.
But it was cool because you had them at the event before the crowd came in. Yeah. And in a way, it's nice because it's like at 8 o'clock, these fools are coming in and we got to end this thing. Yeah. Or else we're going to drown it out for 3 hours and just end up, you know, resenting each other. So I thought that was clever in that you have a definite time limit because people are coming in. So it has to end at some point.
Well, I wanted it to be, there to be a lot of inclusion in the dialogue, which that means you would want it to be longer. But at the same time, I mean, what you were talking about, your past experience that was negative, I can't comment on the past. Yeah. But one of my wish list things was to make how things were going in the local chapter. I wanted it to be very non-bureaucratic while still inclusive and really effective. So it just meant like I just tried to strip out any of the unnecessary formalities from it. Yeah.
And kind of lead and listen, but don't keep it so open that it's hobbling the project.
Yeah. And a lot of, I mean, I'm still a newcomer to this. So there's some formalities we follow, the Robert's rules, which is,
Robert's rules of order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I think makes sense for certain decisions, but I try to only keep it to those decisions and not let that kind of bureaucracy kind of weigh down just casual conversation and casual decision making.
So I'm going to lead right now and say, let's get into, I mean, that was great. That changed a lot of my opinions. And we've talked a lot about design organizations, Emrys and I. So yeah, I have a much better feeling about it now.
Yeah,
so,
I definitely came into, the approach of the entire, any sort of organization like that is I'm not convinced of it, but now after this, I'm definitely more leaning towards in favor of it, just due to everything that it adds to the community and nationally as well. It's good to hear.
Oh, thanks.
So now we get into the part of the show, which, what do you want to call it this week?
Ooh.
First one was thrift store. Second one was called Grandma's Purse.
I'm going to call this one, found it in between my car seats.
How many car seats do you have?
2, 3, none. I have no car seats. Fuck. This segment just sucks.
Yeah. So,
but it's good.
Yeah, it sucks. It's super good. And it's terrible.
It's a great piece of shit.
But this is the part where we like to share just cool things we found recently. It can be a tool, it can be a resource, and it can just be something good to look at that'll get you out of your head. Marcus, what'd you find?
This was another situation where it was a last minute.
Do you want to make the sound effect of reaching between your car seats?
Okay. Here's my fully artist expertise here.
Okay, you gonna open that door first? Oh, there you go.
Found it.
You need to take your shirt off. There you go.
It goes off real fast. That's the sound of sunlight reflecting. So I found this site called Simplify That Shit. So basically you can upload any image to the site and it turns it into a modern art creation. So if I were to drop in, for example, a picture of the Ultimate Warrior, it turns it into this.
Is that Mondrian Ultimate Warrior?
That's gorgeous.
So it turns everything that you drop into it basically into basic geometric shapes of squares and circles and lines, but based on the colors and its position. And I've tried it a few times with like the Hulkamania logo. And so you can then you can download it, and they've done some other stuff where they've shown like, oh, this is what the Simpsons couch looks like, or a Van Gogh painting looks like through this algorithm. And it's really interesting to see this because that's essentially somebody could have created that and could charge a lot of money for it.
What if you take you took the Ultimate Warrior and turned it into a lovely piece of art? What if you took the result of that rendering, like the piece of art it generates? And what if you put it back into it trying to generate the same style of art?
It's
like asking a computer if it can love. It starts sparking and smoking. It doesn't know what to do.
If I were to put that back in and it came out as a picture of the Ultimate Warrior, that would be incredible. But it didn't. It just turned it into a more simplified...
No, it's the Undertaker.
Turned it into 2 cubes and a little tiny line. There was another...
So, sorry, what URL is this?
simplify.that.sh.it. So simplify that shit.
It's kind of the complete opposite of the domain name.
Kind of. Yeah.
Complicate that shit.
There was a site a couple of weeks ago that somebody had created where you could draw a face in this little box, and then using whatever super magic powers the site had, you would try and figure out where the eyes were and the mouth and the hair, and would add color to it, and it was fucking creepy. This one is a little bit more gentle, but I'll throw that one up there on as well.
Okay,
because they're hilarious to fool around with.
Cool, yeah, and so get your Ultimate Warrior pictures ready because it's going to be a hot weekend. For me, I was the past couple weeks I've been kind of burnt out on work. I've been getting work done, but I feel like I've just been trapped in the same kind of bubble for a while. So when I do something and it doesn't feel good, even though it should because it's correct and the client's happy, it tells me that my creativity beakers are emptying. And what I like to do is it's not like, well, sketch 9 things every day. Like there's all these articles on how to be more creative. What I like to do is go back and look at the shit that got me into design in the first place. And the place I go to first is joshuadavis.com. For anybody who did Flash in the early 2000s, everybody knows Joshua Davis. He basically turned action scripting into art and like chaos math and all this kind of stuff. He had this site called Prey Station, which it just had all of his experiments. And every time he hit it, it was because it was randomly generated numbers and code, and he gave it parameters. It created randomly generated art. And then he went on to do work for like BMW. He wrapped like a brand new BMW. They hired him in like one of his patterns, and he like drew all the lines of the car, then made all the custom art, and then threw it into the generator. And he had something called the beautiful accident is what he calls it. And basically he'll build it out perfectly, all the shapes, all the colors, all the everything that he wants within a range because it's all kind of random. And then he just hits refresh 7,000 times until it randomly generates one that he's in love with. And then before he was able to print the stuff he was making, he figured out how to take in like an old Apple PostScript printer, and he hooked it up to like his Mac, and he figured out how to rig it where he could print the vectors from Flash on like large scale pieces of paper. So he's done work for like BMW, Pepsi, I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the tour they did like 2 years ago, the huge screen behind them the entire time is all just randomly, the entire show is randomly generated stuff that's reacting to the music. And he's just kind of like a older now, but you know, I guess we're all technically older now, but he's just kind of like a grimy kind of skateboarder that got into this computer art and just kind of changed the way that I saw everything that had to do with design. I wasn't too stoked on it when I first started. And then I got his book called Flash to the Core, which was all about randomly generating art with ActionScript and all that kind of stuff. So my recommendation is just go to joshuadavis.com, and almost every link on the homepage, it's basically a huge grid. Everyone's like a giant Vimeo full screen video. And it's just all these experiments he does. Follow him on social media and stuff too. He posts all these weird experiments he does. And it's really just, it makes me happy to know that there's still a dude out there making something just for the hell of it and getting paid a shit ton to do it. So
that's always fun.
It inspires me to finish my work. And Emrys, have you found anything cool?
In the car seats.
Yeah. Open the door.
Oh, I'm not. Can you do the sound effects again while I get in the car?
Open the passenger door.
Cool.
That was really different.
That door was replaced with a Swedish one, so that's why it sounds.
But it was like a front door to a house. There you go. Yeah. So, what did you find?
Well, actually, I saw Joshua Davis at a conference. And now I've gone to so many of them. I can't remember if it was a 99U or if it was one that the RGD put on. They put on a good conference in Toronto called Design Thinkers. He was fantastic.
He has a pretty healthy tour schedule. He goes all over the world. Actually, I
remember you have a tattoo, a PlayStation tattoo.
Under my arm, which I didn't know until after. It was from Space Invaders. I thought he invented this little thing. I was like, oh, you like Space Invaders? What's the PS for? I was like, shit.
PlayStation?
And so I played Space Invaders a lot as a kid, and I never put them together because I'm very bright. So sorry, go ahead. You saw Joshua Davis at an event, and he was pretty cool.
So that'll be what I found under the car seat. Will be conferences. Yeah. So what I've experienced, I haven't gone to any duds yet. I'm selective. I go to, I don't know, like around one a year. Mm-hmm. But I would skip a year if the lineup didn't look exciting enough to me. And the one that's coming up is ICO-D, the logo, which I'm going to be afraid to look at now.
The ICO dong?
Like, are we talking eggplant or?
No, this is like a long geometric dong.
I'll have to confirm that afterwards.
Yeah, we'll post a photo of it and everybody can draw their own.
You should probably be able to find it if they did a Google search for ICO-D. So it's ICO-D, I believe. And that's
a capital D, which is the capper.
Oh, that's 100%.
So this is a circumcised logo, is what you're saying.
100% a penis. Just gonna put that. Yeah. It's just a lot of head. Yeah, but it's a penis.
Yeah.
It's
a flimsy shaft, but it's a mighty head.
What you need to know about this organization is it needs to be able to communicate across cultures because people from all different languages here. So it needed an icon that resonates around the world. Yeah. So they have a conference, which I don't even think has anything to do with the shape of their logo. Coming up, I think it's in October, though it might be November. I think it's October in Montreal, which is the World Design Summit. I'm going to it, so that's my conference of this year. Cool. That I'm looking forward to, and it's going to be the first time, I believe, that they have had a conference since they became more multidisciplinary. So I've been to a couple of their conferences back when they were just graphic design, and they were Icograta was the way you'd pronounce the acronym.
Yeah.
Something like, but not International Consortium of Graphic Design Associations.
Yeah.
Something similar to that was that. And so ICOD now is including architecture and industrial design, and it's a meetup in Montreal for several days. And the themes, they're going back to the beginning of our podcast, they're all trying to address the world's biggest problems. So they're like, okay, you can't talk at this conference unless you're trying to fix poverty or war or mass consumerism or bad taste or something huge.
That's really cool. I remember seeing, I think it was a year or two ago, there was a guy on one of those like Kickstarters or Indiegogo, and he'd come up with it was almost architectural, but it was more industry design or industrial design. And it was like a netting device that collected water for places that don't get rain. And I remember seeing that, and that was so amazing to see, and to go to a sort of a conference that encapsulates everything, including that sort of thing for the better of the world. And that sounds like a pretty good time, actually.
Yeah. The reason I don't really enjoy going to a lot of conferences is because it's graphic design conferences, and it doesn't expand anything for me. It's just like, oh, people, what's your favorite font? Like, oh, fucking whatever one will kill you. This is really, really boring. So being able to expand.
Oh, no, it's true, though. There's a conference coming up in Vancouver, and my work was asking, hey, do you want to go to it? And I was no. It's like, well, why not? It's like, I don't get anything from it. It's like stuff I already do, and like I don't want to hear somebody else talk about it. But if it has a drive and a motivation to it for a greater good, then that's a much better type of thing I'd want to go to.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap it up. We like to ask at the end of every episode, why do you still give a shit about design?
Oh, man. Are all three of us answering this, or
nope,
just me?
You.
Just you. No.
Marks and I don't give a shit about it.
Well, first I should throw in a disclaimer in that I'm on a personal level, I'm caring a bit less than I used to.
Yeah.
I loved the craft of design so much after art school that I did like 15 years of graphic design and never looked at painting or drawing or photography. And now I'm starting to get back interested in painting, drawing, and photography, and graphic design is the day job. Instead of what I would do if I was independently wealthy. I would probably go back to it, but I could use a year break now that I've clocked 20 60-hour weeks in graphic design. But why I like it is it clarifies. So it's like cleaning up a mess. So I like graphic design in that I feel like it's our job as graphic designers to help bring clarity to situations. And I think that's a fun task.
I can get on board with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap it up. Thank you, Emrys, very much for being here today.
Yes, thank you, Emrys.
Thanks for having me.
And you guys have our personal guarantee that we'll never keep one under an hour and a half for some reason.
Oh, my God.
Jesus Christ. So anyway, thank you for everybody for listening. You can find us everywhere that we are on social media at Worst Design Show. Go to SoundCloud, Facebook. We're on there at /Worst Design Show.
Or if you go to just designersoftheworst.com, you can find all the links for all the sounds and the show notes for every episode. We post them up there when the episode launches. Just do it.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. And just remember that making pictures for a living isn't all that bad. And if you think it is, then you're the worst.
True that.